Hi there, welcome to day 3 of emerging from conveyancing lockdown in Northern Ireland. Today we are going to talk about something which I suppose it permeates all of the things that I'm going to talk about this week and have talked about already, and that is the incredibly important aspect of the client, stakeholders generally, but the client in particular, having confidence in the conveyancing process. I think if you contrast what's currently happening with the last sort of property crisis in 2007, 2008. I think at that point people didn't have confidence in the market, but they had confidence in the process. I think this time around, somewhat damagingly and perversely, I think people actually have still a fair amount of confidence in the actual property market itself. We know that there is an absolute avalanche of people just waiting to purchase properties and move house. The main issue now is lack of confidence in the actual conveyancing process, and it's something that I'll talk about either Thursday or Friday, which is sort of the external factors that lawyers are having to deal with in conveyancing. So issues with mortgage lenders, we've had issues with property certificates, we've issues with updating searches, and obviously the biggie is the issues we've had with Land Registry and their variable levels of functionality, sort of ranging from 0 to limited. Although, to be fair, I think we're due another announcement, and hopefully they're going to give us some good news in terms of what is coming next in terms of their functionality. So what I want to talk about really today is how we are trying to build some confidence into the process for our clients and really try to sort of make things appear as normal as we can. Like any conveyancing process, you will probably know about, regardless of what line of business you're in, there are elements of the case where things sort of go a bit quiet from our end, and that at times is where clients tend to get maybe a bit uneasy and can very easily be wound up by non-legal advisors that they shouldn't really be listening to. So what we've done, especially at a time at the moment where different solicitors appear to be on different sort of approaches in terms of whether they're working from home, whether they're working in the office, whether they're not working at all, whether they've gone into hibernation, there isn't a lot of consistency in terms of getting contract and title deeds. Even some of the lenders, it's more difficult to get title deeds from. And obviously in Northern Ireland, we're heavily paper-based for title, and therefore we pretty much need the title deeds to work on. So usually at the start of the case, where we're waiting for contract and title, there can be a bit of a delay. What we tend to do, obviously at the very outset, we will do client due diligence, and as part of that we will look at the anti-money laundering and the sort of the source of funds and evidence of wealth. Early on in the case, we are basically trying to get a bit of a feel for that. And we basically get enough information to allow us to carry out our initial anti-money laundering risk assessment. We do continuous risk assessments from an anti-money laundering point of view at various points in each conveyancing file to just reassess the position and make sure that we're still happy with the level of risk that we attributed to it or allocated to it at the outset of the case. And that's fine, and we are continuing to do that. However, what I think we're tending to do now as well is, initially pre-coronavirus, we would really have sort of started to dig down into that documentation and those source of funds and evidence of wealth a wee bit further on into the process when we were looking at meeting with the client and going through the contract meeting. Now, because it's harder to get contract and title, especially on purchases, we're trying to sort of fill up some of that dead time with doing that anti-money laundering stuff, that deep dive into people's evidence of wealth and proof of funds and what have you. We're doing that much earlier. It gives the client a bit more homework to do, as it were. It gives them a perception there's a bit much control over the process. And again, I think that's important because, you know, as much as possible, the client needs to feel that everything is as normal as it can be. Yes, we know that we're in the middle of this situation and things are not normal. However, if you suggest to a client that absolutely everything is different and this is, you know, it's never going to be the same way again, that is not good for confidence in the process. And as I say, my perception is the one thing that we have lost in this over in the last property issue, or the last property crisis, was the fact that people have actually lost confidence in the conveyancing process itself, which is certainly a new one in me and fairly uncharted, choppy waters. So as I say, we're filling in that dead time at the start of the case by doing a lot more of the sort of the admin and the housekeeping and the regulatory stuff earlier on, which allows the client to still sort of be on board with everything that we're doing, and probably emotionally gets them to commit a bit more to the case and just locks them in to wanting to sort of go along this journey to completion whenever that might be. The other biggie is obviously the fact that I mentioned this yesterday when we were in the office. We're probably not going to have any face-to-face meetings this year except in the most exceptional circumstances. So we're very much down the line of remote meetings, and that makes anti-money laundering and ID verification all the more important. But our remote meetings have gone really well. Our solicitors in particular have taken to this brilliantly. There is quite a lot of preparation work required in terms of making sure that the clients will have the right documents in front of them, either in hard copy in terms of contracts and deeds, or in email copy in terms of documents which we want them to approve. And then there's stuff that we'll actually show them on the screen as well on the day of the virtual meeting, which can be quite good fun. So as I say, there's quite a lot of preparation work involved. However, I would say that as time goes on and we're getting more documentation sent to us in a digitized format, then it's much easier for those to turn it around and turn it into a bundle of documents for the way out again for the client to approve as in the meeting. So as I say, clients are loving that. I think our teams have really helped. Some of our solicitors are doing virtual meetings outside office hours, even at weekends, and the feedback from that has been wonderful. So we are still open for business. In terms of how we're actually signing contracts and what contracts we're signing and how much of a sort of a binding contract we're putting clients into, I'm going to come to that over the next probably on Friday, which is the big controversial thing that I'm going to be looking at, which is how we sort of build flexibility into the process as a profession and as almost like a code or a set of guidelines that all of the stakeholders and all of the clients in a chain will have to sign up to have any level of flexibility to make this work. But as I say, that's a spoiler for a couple of days' time. The main issue we're sort of probably looking at the moment in terms of virtual meetings is executing documents and how that's potentially going to stand up. Electronic signature of documents has been a thing for a long time now. Works much better for contracts than it does for deeds and mortgage deeds in particular. There is some case law in and around wills, which is a completely different thing, but sort of virtually witnessing wills isn't seen to be enough. I think there's a first tier decision from a tribunal in England where a solicitor in England, I think, did a virtual meeting with a client signing a document in Hong Kong. That document was then in hard copy couriered back to England. The solicitor witnessed it at that point in hard copy, and the first tier tribunal held that wasn't actually a proper, validly executed witness. So there are some issues in and around that, hence the need for hard copies. I suppose if it does come to it that we go out of lockdown and things need to be followed up, then another hard copy can potentially be signed. And certainly I think with wills, that's something that solicitors are looking at, where if wills are being done on a sort of an ad hoc basis at the moment, it may well be that after lockdown then those wills can be re-signed, or same versions of those wills can be re-signed in front of the solicitor. I was doing so well there. So as I say, this has really been about building confidence into the process, and I think estate agents and mortgage advisors and lenders, but particularly estate agents and solicitors, really need to work together to give the clients that sense of confidence that yes, there are still issues, there are still things, barriers and challenges that we need to deal with, but the more we can give the client to do, the more we can inject a sense of normality into things. Hopefully the more emotionally committed the client will feel and the more confident they will feel in the process, and the more then we can get some completions through when lockdown is loosened. So as I have been saying, more tomorrow on the regulatory side of things and on the sort of external factors which impact conveyancing, and more then. Thank you.